welcome to the Gold Goats and Guns podcast for Tuesday, November 5th, 2019. My name's Tom Luongo, and we've got a lot to talk about. And today I want to talk about, since it's Guy Fawkes Day, we're going to talk about the movie V for Vendetta, as Guy Fawkes was immortalized in popular culture by that movie, 12, 13 years ago now. It's also the day that, and it's interesting that it's also the day that James O'Keefe of Project Veritas finally released a new bombshell on the establishment about the suppression of the importance of the Jeffrey Epstein story. So funny that that O'Keefe timed that for Guy Fawkes Day, don't you think? But before we get to all of that, I want to remind you that you can follow my work over at my blog over at tomluongo.me. You can also follow me on Twitter at TFL1728. Live streams, they happen every Monday night at 8 p.m. and Friday night at 8:30 EST on YouTube. Warning, I'm a bad boy. I got a potty mouth, so if you can't handle it, you know what to do. All right, you can also support me, not only me as a verified publisher, but also anyone else who is by downloading and installing the Brave browser, where you can get paid in crypto tokens called BAT for voluntarily being served internet advertising, as opposed to being forced to consume it through Google, who takes all the money. Moreover, Brave severely limits the amount of spyware following you around the internet and helps to protect your online privacy, while saving you time and bandwidth by blocking all those pesky data snoopers, etc., that are feeding the growing surveillance state. I use Brave all the time. I've been using it for 8 months now. It's one of the best browsers on the market. It's quick, it's fast, and the whole advertising system works like a champ. And thank you to all of you who also support me via Brave. But the main way you can support me and my work is over at Patreon.com/goldgoatsandguns, where you can sign up either for $4 a month for the private market reports, which I publish every Wednesday and Sunday. Think between 30 and 40 minutes of exclusive commentary. And also I run a private Slack server there as well for the growing community to talk amongst themselves whenever they want, or just to have a nice little safe space away from angry Twitter bots. And you can also sign up for the Gold Goats and Guns and monthly investment newsletter, which is designed to wrap up all of the geopolitical chaos, the global macroeconomics, and shifting cultural and technological trends, and wrap that all up into a retail investment focused portfolio strategy designed to help the average person make sense of a world going completely mad. So, with all that said, let's get on with the show. All right, I've got my coffee. I've done the intro. Let's get into this. So let's talk about James O'Keefe and his latest bombshell that he's dropped on the world. And this one is we're talking specifically about the tape he has of Amy Robach, on Good Morning America, talking off the cuff in a way that she's not supposed to be talking. And it's pretty obvious here that she's just kind of going on a rant during what looks like a commercial break, kind of standard commercial break. And this thing is wild, right? So she confirms for us that there's a cover-up, that she had the information on Epstein that she was going to run with 3 years ago. She had the interviews done with people and with Epstein's victims and all of it. And she had Bill Clinton dead to rights, and she's got the royal family dead to rights. And it was obvious here that it was, by what she said, that all of this was squashed. Now, we shouldn't be surprised about any of this. I mean, obviously, we should not be surprised by any of it. But what's important here is what O'Keefe is doing. He's doing a couple of things. But the first thing he's doing is he's giving us the opportunity to help reach the normies, the people who don't want to believe that Jeffrey Epstein is just a pedophile, right? And that he deserved to die because he was a pedophile. Let's just swipe this under the rug, because what Jeffrey Epstein represents, obviously, is something much deeper than that. That the real story here is not that he was a pedophile and that there were a bunch of guys, going there to bang, 16-year-old girls. It was a massive blackmail operation by the US CIA, British MI6, and the Mossad to be able to control our elections and to be able to control our governments, so that even if we do vote for the wrong person, they don't have they have no capacity to change anything because they're fundamentally compromised. Now, that's what this is all about. And we can go through the twists and turns of how it's all been done and trace all the connections, and people like George Webb and Lee Stranahan and so many others are doing work on that. And I can't be arsed to care about that stuff at that level, because it's not my job. My job here is to try and figure out what all this means, right? And where I find this interesting is that if you look at this tape of Amy Robach, it's really obvious that this was some person watching the live feed, listening to the monitor feed coming from the studio, and recording the whole thing on their phone. And this is the kind of thing they can't stop. What are they going to do? Tell people they're not allowed to have cell phones to stop this stuff? I mean, how are they going to be able to even function going forward? And they know. So at the end of the day, this thing's untraceable. And every time O'Keefe lays out, releases one of these things, it gives more spine to the people who are worried about standing up and being found out. Okay? Every time he's able to do this and protect the identity of the person. And we'll find out if he does here. But every time he does that, it's going to make it easier for the next person to step forward and the next person to feed him information. I mean, in the 2.5 years I've been doing this, I now regularly, as a matter of fact, all morning, I've been fielding emails from people in Europe helping me with finer points of European politics, both in Germany and in Hungary. Hungary's for, future writing, and Germany because I've been writing about the German electoral system and the potential for a meltdown there, which ties into all of this. What O'Keefe is doing. To make sure I get it all right and get the implications of everything right. And that's actually another podcast maybe for later in the week. But it's really important that you understand this, that O'Keefe is making these people stronger. He's giving spine to the spineless and a voice to the voiceless. And it's so very impressive to watch. Even if every time he puts something like this out, it's not a bombshell. Every time he does put out a bombshell and the person survives it, it increases the likelihood that the next thing he puts out is a bombshell. And now you can't ignore him. Now you can't marginalize him. So this gets crazy quick, and it starts to multiply and accelerate from here. It could easily accelerate from here. James O'Keefe could easily accelerate his influence from here. Okay? I got to remember, because what's important about this particular tape is, like everything else, we live in a post-Dorothy Oz, right? We live in Oz after Dorothy has revealed the wizard for who he is, which is a sad old man yelling into a microphone and not with any real power. And then she leaves. And then Oz is left with this power vacuum, with their institutions broken down, with all of this stuff revealed to be just some dude, right? The emperor having no clothes. And she bears no responsibility for it. She just opens up the floodgates, and then she pisses off, and they're left with the having to deal with the fallout, right? And that's where we are. And we can see them now. And when we see them for what they are, it's so much harder for them to continue to marginalize us and to marginalize our voices. So I fundamentally believe this is a great thing that we've seen so far, thanks to what James O'Keefe did here. He's been doing this for years now, but he's starting to raise the stakes, folks. He's really beginning to get there, and it's not just him. It's happening from all corners. It's happening from all quarters. We would talk about, for example, like QAnon, right? And I've been saying for years that or certainly for at least 2 years now, I don't think QAnon anymore is real. Matter of fact, I think QAnon is probably closer to a standalone complex than he is anything else, meaning he doesn't really exist and never really has existed. But everybody who needs to become Q for a day becomes Q. And then, publishes some political horoscope or drops some thing out there for the people to chew over. And I think that Q himself at this point has become both a mechanism of control counter programming as much as he is, potentially some guy with inside information. Not that I've ever believed that guy existed. So, this is the kind of thing that we have to be aware of, that the disinformation campaign is going to go crazy, that we're going to see more pathetic attempts at tearing down real information and calling it deep fakes. There's going to be a lot of bad fake material like this Amy Robach tape coming out over the next year or so. We're going to see them try and defend, try and dismiss things like, catching Bill Clinton or whatever, talking about how much he likes to bang 19-year-old girls or 18-year-old girls, how that's a deep fake that was created with supercomputers and everything else. Well, they catch Donald Trump on a hot mic, using the N-word or, saying something really, really horrible about whomever, right? So and we're not supposed to believe that one. They're going to, they're going to do this stuff. That's where we're going. We live in a world now where John Brennan is being excused as a hero for creating a task force, a special task force designed to take down Donald Trump early, before he's even become the nominee, because he represents such a threat to them. And that somehow this director of the CIA, who's not supposed to even be operating on U.S. soil, we have people saying, thank God for the deep state, for their Herculean efforts to overthrow a sitting president. Like, our elections don't mean anything. The people in Britain are finding this out now. And this ties into why this is all interesting, that we're doing this on Guy Fawkes Day. And how we're now dealing with a British electoral campaign season where the establishment is desperately trying to hold on to the control of the electoral system by attacking Nigel Farage and the Brexit Party from every angle, even though they represent real substantive change, while all the other parties are forming alliances to hold on to power and or break the UK up. And it's sad. So that, but all for the purpose of maintaining the political control over City of London and in and around the royal family, which again ties right back into the Amy Robach tape, because why was this thing squashed in the first place? Because the British royal family put such a huge pressure on them to keep Prince Andrew's name out of this, right? So you can see the invisible hand of MI6, the British political establishment everywhere. You can see Israel's invisible hand wanting to have control over U.S. politicians to get them to do dumb things with our foreign policy for their benefit. We see the fruits of that labor in things like Yemen and Syria and Libya and Iraq and Iran and even Venezuela to a greater or lesser extent. So never forget that that's what we're talking about here, that this is all about people trying to maintain their power while having been exposed. And now they're just embracing the fact that they've been exposed in a kind of last-ditch effort to say, no, we're doing this all for your good. But, when you stop and think about it and you remove Trump's name from the equation, it's like, so you think it's okay for our intelligence services to make a mockery of our elections and to pick and choose our candidates for us, or to ensure that if we do choose the wrong candidate, that he still does the right thing, because the unelected bureaucracy who actually does, in effect, run the country, that status quo should be maintained. That's what you're saying? That we're not supposed to have any say over this, and that really the elections are mostly just a way for you to blow off steam once every 2 years? Yeah, good luck with that. I don't feel that way. And so that's why this whole thing with this happening of Guy Fawkes to me is important. And I think this is why V from Vendetta as a movie has become such a major part of the zeitgeist surrounding this loss of faith in political and even economic institutions. And it's only going to get worse from here. And it's just interesting. I knowing what I know about Alan Moore, the writer of the original comic book, and how he didn't like the movie script and thought it was cheesy and dumb. But unfortunately for him, his original comic book, which by the way I do prefer to the movie, but is irrelevant because it's not a story that has the broad appeal necessary to make the story have impact and weight. I mean, Moore's comic book is probably a more realistic take on what happens when you pressure a political system like V did, and that you watch in the third act of the comic, all of the major characters who have power eat themselves alive as the society falls into abject chaos. And then V shows up after V's dead. Evie shows up as V as the symbol of the rebirth of the next phase of this thing, but of the society, where the society has already collapsed. In the movie, of course, it's done the other way. The society has, for all intents and purposes, collapsed, but the people didn't realize it yet. And now it's time for them to sanction the destruction of Parliament and the old institutional order, but do so behind the mask of the quote-unquote terrorist. And to show up in anonymity. But ultimately, they take their masks off in the end to watch it all happen after they've gotten the government to stand down. I think it's such a fascinating series of images, the last 3 minutes of that movie, and I think it's incredibly moving and incredibly powerful. How it plays out, and I think it's incredible how much the core ideas that Alan Moore was talking about in the comic book translated themselves into the movie, and then translated themselves further into popular culture. Now, Alan Moore will be horrified that it's all being used in the service of right-wing populism, what he would consider right-wing populism, being a Marxist anarchist that he is. But so what? Tough, Alan. As I've been saying that about his work for so long, your inherent leftism is a contradiction with your inherent humanism. And that's the problem. And it always shows up at the margin in your stories, and the way your stories are consumed, and the way they're actually applied to the world at large. And I find that funny that the older Alan Moore gets, the more irrelevant he gets to his own work, while his work lives on in what he would consider a bastardized form, and serving the cause of human liberation, but in a fundamentally different way than he thinks we should be liberated. So when you see this, it's really funny, and at least the way I see it, and having a 25-year history with this story, at least, if not longer than that, almost 30-year history with that story. I think I read it in the late 1980s, early 1990s, actually, for the first time. But you look around and you see the populism that's coming, and it's all in terms of V, and you see it all over Twitter today and everything else, but you look and you see it. The Gilets jaunes in France, right? Even Viktor Orban's version of populism in Hungary, Brexit, Matteo Salvini's Lega in Italy. It's when you look at these movements, even Geert Wilders in the Netherlands and others, and even a compromised one like Sebastian Kurz and OMV in Austria, you can see, and of course AFD in Germany, you can see how these pushes towards culture and nationalism and identity and that they're being fueled by an anger that understands that we can see what these people are trying to do to us, and we're saying no. And no matter how much they try to propagandize us, no matter how much they try to gaslight us and fake us out and give us bad information, I always go back to that scene in V for Vendetta when Adam Sutler, John Hurt, puts on the massive propaganda campaign about the and Project Fear gets stoked to the gills, and after that great scene where he says, "Man, we have to remind everybody that how much they need us." Mr. Dascom get out there and use the BTN, use the BBC to propagandize to us. And as that montage is playing, there's the family, where the little girl that eventually gets shot, and there's the father, while watching all this play out, he just goes, bollocks. He doesn't believe a word of it anymore. And you can just see that the anger is seething, and it's everywhere. And it's gonna come, it's gonna pop. And it's why I'm long guillotines, folks. I don't want to see it happen. But these people are not going to give up power willingly, and therefore it's gonna get ugly and far worse before it gets better. And that's just where we are. So be prepared for it, and be prepared to fight for it. And watching the way people have been fighting for Brexit for the last 3 years, I think it's pretty enheartening. I think you should be enheartened by this. And for example, if the polls in Britain shift in favor of Nigel Farage and the Brexit Party over the next 6 weeks, rejecting Boris Johnson's fake Brexit, it's going to be very, very interesting what happens next. And the possibility of being able to hold on to the cover-ups the way they have. Oof. Imagine getting James O'Keefe getting a tape of Boris Johnson actively scheming about betraying Brexit while not looking like he is. Imagine if that comes out. I don't know about you, but I'll be cackling like the Joker. Frankly. All right. That's all I've got to say today. So you guys, hope you enjoyed it. We're going to do this every once in a while. I'm going to try and write a little bit less and talk a little bit more, because I think I'm getting better at this. So, there you go. Hope you enjoyed it. We will talk soon. This has been the Gold Goats and Guns podcast for Tuesday, November 5th, 2019. You guys be well. You take care. Keep your stick on the ice.